Hello, I'm Dilip Sarmah. I'm the product manager for SAP as Services and SAP IoT. Thank you for joining the 7 building blocks to realize IoT scenario. Uh, Today, I'm going to talk about 3 things, especially developer's dilemma, 7 building blocks to realize IoT scenarios, and implementation example. And let's talk about developers' dilemma. Here, let's first imagine a situation that developers often face, right? And given a customer use case, especially IoT use case, how to start, right? So to dig a little bit deeper, vaccine manufacturers may want to make sure the vaccines are safely delivered to distribution centers, hospitals, and clinics. This means that vaccine manufacturers wants to monitor remotely vaccines all the time. So we can summarize. Uh, we can summarize the 2 things, especially the customer scenarios, when we go a little bit deeper, that there is no real-time visibility of vaccines temperature, and it is difficult to maintain the quality of the vaccines once out of the warehouse. So, so how do I start to build a solution? That's always the question comes up. So to do that, uh, what more do I, as a developer or as an implementation engineer, know about the customer's environment? So next step for a developer, for you to start talking or finding out what kind of solutions the customer have. Do they have S4HANA? Do they have SAP Extended Warehouse Management or Transportation Management? And after talking to customers, you may soon realize that you know this use case may be a very good fit for you to use SAP Internet of Things IoT or an SAP as services, especially SAP IoT and SAP as services to handle the IoT data, rules, event, and actions. So once you have this much information, so now what? As a developer, it you must have a sense that where you want to start. So many times, right, most often, I've seen that developer immediately start talking or thinking about the sensors. What type of the sensor I need, what type of the data should I gather, right? Do I need the temperature? Do I need the geolocation? Do I need the humidity? All that questions start coming up, and how often data are needed, and do I need the data? Do I need the big data? What type of data storage are needed? What are the backend integration? And what happens? That pretty soon it becomes a confusing, and often we see that we forget the actual business scenario, and it starts to become a mess. So the whole question comes, is there a systematic way to find out technical challenges at the same time keep the larger goal for the customers or business outcome? So there should be a better approach. That's where we try to find out what can we do to get this better approach. So let's go to the 7 building blocks to realize IoT scenarios. So here, what I am proposing is that uh, you can create any IoT project using these 7 building blocks, right? And you can see the 7 building blocks coming from bottom up or top down. There are the stacks there. And if you look around these 7 building blocks, you can see the devices, sensors and communications, measurements and payloads, sensor data, or the models, data pre-processing, rules and actions, business process and executions, analytics and machine learning, and business solutions, business scenarios. So top and the stack are the business outcome, business scenarios, and the bottom of the stack you can see are the technology focus. So when you think those things, I always recommend that you start, thinking from the top. That is, start from the business scenarios. What exactly customers, customer pain points are. Once you figure it out, customer pain points, larger use cases, then you start from the bottom, like thinking about what kind of data you want to gather, what kind of device you need, and at the same time, what kind of analytics and data pre-processing you need. So the approach will be the top down and bottom up, and you'll be meeting somewhere in the middle. So let's talk about an implementation example. It will be nicer or better to understand the whole these 7 building blocks. If you think a real business, a customer business use case, and how you implement it. Here I put together an example for you. And basically, in SAP, we always recommend 3 steps, the implementation methodologies: discovery, design, and implementation. And I will talk these 7 building blocks as part of these 7 and as part of these, uh, implementation processes. So at the beginning, in the discovery, it is very important, right, for even doing anything, very important to find out what are the business challenges and business benefit the customer are trying to find out and trying to resolve or address in this project. So if you look around the specific example I'm trying to handle over here is a cold chain tracking scenario. In cold chain tracking scenario, the vaccines delivery at the beginning, I talked about it. You can think about this from the COVID-19 vaccines delivery. They have to keep it always in specific, temperatures. Otherwise, it will be spoiled. All that things you can think. Then you can very quickly find out the business challenges, right? How safely transfer this temperature sensitive products along a supply chain through thermal and refrigerated packaging methods, and ensure that the regulatory compliance of these, as well as keeping down the spoilage. So these are the business challenges you are trying to find out. And these are the larger business challenges and the benefit out of it, complying the regulatory requirements and reducing the spoilage and increasing the qualities. So once you have the bigger high level understanding, then you can go a little bit deeper in terms of implementations, like in the use case. So when you talk about the use case, first thing you need to think about the personas. Here, 2 personas you can immediately see. One is the warehouse managers who wants to maintain the quality of the vaccines when the vaccines are in the warehouse. And another persona is the logistic manager who wants to ensure the vaccine's quality at delivery, right? Once you know these 2 personas, then you can go in detail or deeper to see what exactly you need. So that means you need a sensor devices where, for example, in the vaccine refrigerators or in the containers when it is inside the truck, right? The sensor should send you the information about the location of the truck or the temperatures of the vaccines, probably every 1 minute or so, so that you have you can monitor the temperature. And you're talking about the temperature budget. In some cases, some cold chain scenarios, they may like to have a temperature budget. A temperature budget means probably in total in a trip, the company may allow, or the vaccines may allow to go beyond the threshold for maximum 1 minute or so. So even if the temperature goes beyond the threshold, you will not put any alerts. But if it goes beyond that budget, then you will put the alert. So these are the different kind of things you can go deeper and find out those scenarios. And as well as you find out what kind of the backend systems you want to integrate, like S/4HANA, the sales or purchase or transportation management, all those things you detail down in these sections. The next comes to the the discovery, the bottom up that we talked about in our 7 stacks, that is the sensor, the technologies and all those. So at the beginning, when we were talking about the SAP IoT, here is the thing model. So thing comes the first. Over here, if it is in the truck, if the vaccines are in the truck becomes the thing. If vaccines are in the warehouse, then the refrigerator unit becomes the thing, right? And sensor is similar. When we're talking about the sensor, it may be temperature, it may be, maybe more than that, geolocations like latitude and longitude, and some scenarios you may want to send humidity. Also, it depends on your use case and scenarios. And connectivity, that's also if it is inside the warehouse, we're talking about the Wi-Fi connectivity. And if it is, on the road, the trucks are driving it, then we're talking about right, using cellular network like SIM cards through which you can send the data. And the integration, now you can detail down what kind of integration you need. Do you need the S/4HANA? Do you need the transportation management? Do you need the global track and trace? And also the rules and notifications. So you can detail down the exact rules. What are the threshold values? What are the budget, temperature budget? What kind of actions we need? Is the applications alerts, or it is the SMS, or it is the email? All those things you can go and put it down in detail in this section. So once you are done with that, then it comes to the next step, and that is the design. The design, especially I would prepare for when you start designing, thinking around reference architecture. So when you think about the reference architecture, it is sometimes becomes a little bit difficult to come up with reference architecture if it is a newer type of use cases. So it is always good to find out a template, reference architecture template, and from there you can start working on. Especially in IoT scenarios, there are many templates, reference architecture templates. You can get it from our Jam site or from our SAP content. We can provide those reference architecture templates. And these specific templates, you can see that on this use case, specific implementation use case, I'll be interested to use SAP IoT and data coming directly to the SAP IoT from sensors, or may come from a third-party partners IoT cloud also. And SAP services is there at the edge to get the data directly at the edge and process and alert right there in the warehouse. But when data comes into the SAP IoT provides the data storage, rules and actions and all that. And from there, we can integrate with GTT, the global track and trace, to associate the sensor data, the events with the business transactions, like outbound transactions, or transportation management, or sales order, purchase orders, all that. And also you can also directly connect to the SAP S/4HANA or ECC. So for the specific this implementation, I'll be not talking to you about SAP Analytics or advanced track and trace for pharmaceutical. So the next thing, probably since this is the cold chain scenarios, the rules and events and actions are in terms of the heavy in terms of the implementation. So it is good that you understand that pretty well, the process, the phase, and the step-by-step process of what you need when you, for example, at the delivery planning of anything in the truck, you need to first have this, attached to the sensor with that, and you have the temperature budget, a threshold, all the information. After that, you need to move on to the specific, what's called the rules, what kind of rules you're gonna use, and that may be a temperature budget rule or just the threshold rules. After that, you need to find out what kind of actions you need. Do I need to send the SMS action or alerts to the driver who is driving the truck, or do we need to send it to the logistic managers or warehouse manager? That need to be clear out over here. And if something happens, then what you do? Do you go and return the deliveries or reissue the next outbound deliveries or shipments? Those things also need to figure this out. So once you have all these, Then comes to the part of the implementation. And implementation, that's where really you start implementing the code, coding, and sometimes coding becomes the mostly configuration, sometimes creating some iFlows, sometimes creating the UI. It depends on a specific, specific need and use cases. But here I'll just show you the visual implementation, or the things that we so far talked about, right? So we talked about pharma's, warehouse manager who wants to maintain the quality of the vaccine. This is one of the what's called persona we talked about at the beginning. So what happens? These, in a warehouse setting, all these refrigerator units are attached with the sensor, and these sensors are sending data, and those data are gathered at the warehouse, and those data are sent to the, SAP Edge services. So SAP Edge services pre-process those data and run the rules and actions over there, and using those you can monitor the real time what's going on your vaccines in a huge warehouse, right? And the next comes the logistic manager's persona. Here we want, logistic manager wants to ensure that the vaccine's quality at delivery. So the first step over here is to, put those vaccine container into the truck, and trucks are attached with the 5G devices. These devices, sensor devices, will send the data through 5G to the SAP IoT, and SAP IoT will have this whole time series data, analyze those data, and create the rule. And with using the rules and actions, it will send those events to the global track and trace. And in the global track and trace, then you can associate with these events with this pick, pack, and ship, or ship all these, various transactions of your what's called the shipments, right? So this is how your warehouse manages his persona, and your logistic manager is going to manage his personas. So continue your learning experience for SAP TechEd 2020. There are a lot of other sections are there, sessions are there. You can find in TechEd. So please go and find the one that matches your interest. And thank you for attending this session. And my contact information is just in the slide. You can send me emails. I'll be happy to reply if you have any questions. Thank you very much.